Welcome, everyone, to the U Plus AI Vodcast. I'm Ranga Sampath, the host of the U Plus AI Vodcast and the U Plus AI podcast. I have with me today Dr. Stefan Buttigieg. Welcome, Stefan. And I just finished a podcast recording with him where we talked about his work, especially the work that he did with the COVID-19 tracing app in Malta and his work with Digital Health Malta. So be sure to listen to that at uplusai.com and in all popular podcast apps. Now we have Dr. Stefan for some more fun segments throughout this. So in the first segment, I call it the elevator pitch. I'll ask Dr. Stefan Buttigieg to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Stefan Buttigieg. I am a specialist in public health medicine, but also passionate in digital health and social media in healthcare. In fact, I believe that my life is about bringing together technology and healthcare and also communicating its value to the wider population. That will be my mission. Digital health for all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Buttigieg. Now we go to our next segment. I call this favorites. So here, I would like to ask you, since you've been involved in so much of digital health, what is a product or a service, in healthcare technology or digital health that you're waiting to try? Like you can't wait enough to get your hands on it.
Waiting to try, because like your mindset goes on to what's available. I think definitely would be an AI platform which manages my health and which is connected to all the health data services that I needed to connect to. I think this is still a dream for many people, but once I have that, I think that would be fantastic. Once I have that fully set up, that is a service that I would love to have access to in the shortest time possible.
So what comes closest in your understanding of, or which country or which solution that you have seen so far comes closest to, or maybe is closest to getting there?
My phone. So Apple Health, like really brings together a lot of different sources.
Right.
And I think one of the missing links is actually access to my electronic health record data, which right now is a bit separate, and there's a lot of work being done in the background in Malta on the National Electronic Health Record, which will enable, Apple Health to be part of the picture in the future. So I think once I have that, which is closer rather than later, then I think I'll be, I would have reached an extra level,
Yeah, and certainly your point about the phone makes sense because, we heard that the next version of the Apple iPhone is also going to have, I think, blood oxygen monitoring, right? Which we have heard so much about in COVID.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Apple iWatch.
I can start. I can check my SpO2 right now.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges that I have right now, because ECG is not available for all countries and not available for Malta yet. So I'm looking forward for that to be enabled for country once it passes all the necessary regulatory approvals. So that will be that's something else to look forward to, the ECG at least.
Oh yeah, certainly. Okay, great. So we move on to our next segment. I call this Bust a Myth. So here, I'm going to ask you, in your experience, what you think is a big myth in the AI and healthcare space, and what would you do to bust it?
One of the biggest myths is like that AI will replace doctors. That is one of the biggest myths. And I replace that myth and I tell them, no, it isn't AI will replace doctors. And this is an inspiration from a fellow colleague, Dr. Bertalan Mesco. And I would actually replace it, say, no, but AI how doctors who use AI will replace those who don't.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of the matter. And that applies for healthcare organization. It applies for healthcare professionals. It literally talks about everyone, even a financial professional. If they don't use AI, if they use AI, the financial, they will replace those who don't.
So I guess it's not just for doctors, but it's across industries, is what you're saying.
Across the industries, really, even the food industry. If they don't use AI, and they will in the future they might even run out of business. So that is the biggest challenge, I think.
Oh, that's nice. That's well put, Doctor. So let's move on to our next segment. This is something that we've been doing from school. I call this fill in the blanks. So,
okay.
So I will give you a sentence, and then where I need you to fill in, you can fill in with a word or multiple words or a phrase. I will just say dash dash, and you can fill it with whatever comes to your mind at that point of time. All right, so let's get started. Your first fill in the blanks is, if AI had to solve one most important aspect in healthcare, it would be dash.
Health inequity.
And could you explain what do you mean by that?
That means that healthcare needs to, healthcare is not something, a commodity. It's a right. So even for digital health, there should be the approach for digital health for all, and that means that there is no discrimination whatsoever. And that would be my vision for digital health, that it arrives to everyone's phone, everyone's laptop, everyone's computer. It's there available. You don't have to pay up a premium to get access to digital health, but it's actually there available for you. And the same with health inequity, that there are groups of people that unfortunately, even though we do all our very best, they're still missed out upon. And it could be simply a matter of education. It could be simply a matter of access, not reaching out to them. So I think we can have all the best digital health in the world, but if we are unable to reach really important parts of our population, then we can't even offer them the digital health.
Sure.
So that's a link that needs to be done, and I think that would be, especially AI using social determinants of health data and electronic health record data. I think that's where the magic will happen to help us solve the health inequity challenges.
Very well put. Health inequity. I mean, that's something certainly to think about. Thank you. Now we move to our next segment. I call this Imagine. And in this, I will give you a scenario in the future, right? And sort of you would have to walk us through your imagination on how that scenario would be in the future, right?
Okay.
And obviously, it's a healthcare scenario. So, so here's Imagine for you. It's the year 2030. You realize that after making a visit to a local park in the daytime, you have developed what looks like a skin rash. Walk us through your imagination on how a diagnosis, as well as probably a resolution to this, would proceed from this point on, that is from the point you notice this, in 2030.
So I would bring out my smartphone, which would have a LiDAR-enabled camera. It would scan my full length of hand. It would also take an image of that particular rash. It would index that against a database using AI of common rashes, and it would come up with a pre-diagnosis, like a draft, let's so to say, like a draft diagnosis, before you go for the fully confirmed clinical diagnosis. And it gives me the actions that I need to take, next actions that I need to take. That is, go to the emergency, or it might ask me more questions. That is the kind of vision of healthcare that it's so easy and so accessible that I can get it from my phone. I could even imagine having special glasses, like augmented reality glasses. Have a look at it, and those glasses will actually get me closer to the diagnosis. So the
Sure.
full experience.
Wow. Now, as a doctor, I can imagine that you're comfortable with what diagnosis will be pronounced by an app to you, right? Even if it's maybe mild or even serious. But what about somebody who's not a doctor? You think they would be comfortable if the app tells them something that looks a little bit more grim or grave?
I think that's where regulation comes in, and
Mm,
certification and trust. That means that if you have a digital health app, you have to gain trust first. You
mm,
have
mm,
to follow the rules. You have to. Um, okay, sometimes if when it comes to startups innovation, there might be some bending of rules which happens,
mm,
but in reality, if you want to gain users' trust, you need to be credible. You need to verify. You need to validate. You need to, even if there is a threat test period, as happening in Germany. They give them that 1 year test period, but you still need to show that you're credible.
mm,
And that mark of credibility, which even comes in food, for example, which even comes in oil, for example, to
mm,
make sure that your oil is of good quality, that you're not putting in some cheap oil which is
mm,
actually damaging your car instead, for example, or electricity, the standards. So
mm,
that's when you get that kind of trust,
mm,
then you're in a better position to say, okay, then I can trust this app to
mm.
get closer to my final answer, because in reality, digital health is enabling that person to come closer to his final answer, rather than having to figure that out in an outpatient's appointment in 6 months time, you know
Mm, mm,
but
mhm.
rather knowing at that point and getting closer to the answer, and
Right.
having a plan.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, makes sense. Certainly. Um, Thank you. So we move on to our last segment. This
Yeah.
is called Tweet Saves the Day. And since
Ooh.
you are such a Twitter person, I'm sure you will ace this one.
All right. I
So
will try.
here,
Let's see.
the idea is that I give you a scenario or a
All right.
situation,
All right.
and let's say you are given the opportunity to write a tweet to
Mm,
get out of that situation or to address that situation in some way. And so you can share that tweet with us. Okay.
okay.
So here's your situation.
Hmm.
Humans are biased. Therefore, there is little that needs to be done about artificial intelligence systems being biased. It is
Mm.
it is what it is, says one advocacy group. You're given a chance to write a tweet to address the concern arising out of that position.
Hmm.
Please share that tweet with us. What would you say?
Because about the human bias. Yes. So okay, if I had to write a tweet, and I would write like dot dot dot, and that's why we need to and that's why we need explainable AI.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
how I would answer that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we need to explainable AI, to move away from black box solutions and understand the steps taken.
Hmm.
Kind of, that would be a quick tweet that comes to mind.
Right.
I have to see it in front of me sometimes, because usually when I tweet, I don't just like,
Yeah. 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 I know. I know. I
Trump
know.
style, not Trump style, like this. I actually say, okay, and then let me double check. So, sometimes, although, yeah, I think I would write dot dot dot, because I like this dot dot dot,
Dot dot.
and dot dot dot, and that's why we need explainable AI.
Very
Because it's
good.
true. There is a bias in AI, and you need to take that into consideration and try to understand
Right. And,
how it
and
came.
and 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 first you would need to even understand that there is bias. Once you understand it, and you need to know why the reason,
Exactly.
what is the reason behind that, and that's why I think you pointed out about explainable AI. So great. Thank you. And
Cool.
this has been most fun, Dr. Stefan Buttigieg. Really
Same
enjoyed
here.
the conversation. I
Yeah.
hope I didn't put you too much in a spot. I think you.
I think I am now. By now, I'm quite used to it. I think, especially after this year, like 100 times more for sure.
Right, right. So thank you so much. It was most interesting to talk to you. And I'd like to remind our viewers again that this is the video segment, what I call the Whatcast. And now
Yeah.
we did a full podcast with Dr. Stefan Buttigieg, and where we talked, in detail about his work at Digital Health Malta, about his work with the COVID-19 tracing app, and his views on AI in healthcare, his views on digital health, and his suggestions on how we move forward with this. So I would definitely request our viewers to go to uplusai.com or to the popular podcast apps to catch this podcast. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, Ranga.